May I have your attention, please? Shabbat Shalom, everyone. My name is son of Yisrayl Hawkins, and I'd like to serve you forever as a priest starting very soon. It's now time to start finding your seats for Sabbath services.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. My name is son of Yisrayl Hawkins, and I'd like to serve you as a priest starting very soon. It's a privilege and honor to present the sons and daughters of Yisrayl now entering the sanctuary. I now present one of the sons of Yisrayl, Yisrayl Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. The title of my speech today is The Righteous Will Suffer Persecution. All throughout mankind's history, the righteous saints of Yahweh have suffered persecution, from Cain persecuting Abel to this very day. We see many examples in the Holy Scriptures of this persecution. If you can turn over to Yirmiah, it's on page 594. It's Yirmiah 26 and verse 8 through 9. It says, "It came to pass, as soon as Yirmiah had finished speaking all these words Yahweh had commanded him to speak to all the people, that the priests and the prophets and all the people seized him, saying, 'You will surely die. Why have you prophesied in the name of Yahweh, saying, the house of Yahweh will be like Shiloh, and the city will be desolate, without inhabitants?' And all the people were gathered against Yirmiah in the house of Yahweh." And also in Acts, if you can turn over to page 847. Page 847, it's Acts 54 and 59. And it says, "When they heard these things, they were cut to the heart, and they gritted their teeth with rage. And they stoned Stephen, who was calling upon Yahweh and saying, 'Savior Yahweh, receive my spirit.'" It is prophesied that we, the house of Yahweh, in these last days will suffer persecution. In Isaiah, it's on page 558. It's Isaiah 43 verse 28. It says, "Therefore I will dissolve the Levitical priesthood and give Jacob to the curse and Yisrael to reproaches." And also in Matthew 24, Matthew 24 verse 9. "Then they will hand you over to be afflicted, and they will kill you, and you will be hated above all people for my name's sake." So we are persecuted because we believe in Yahweh and we keep his laws. If pastor is persecuted, then we, being his seed, will also be persecuted. If you can turn over to Yochanan 15 and verse 20. It's on page 833, and it says, "Remember the word that I say to you, a servant is not greater than his ruler. If they have persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they have kept my word, they will keep yours also." Persecution can come in many different forms and from many different directions. It can come from family members, employees, the media, just to name a few. If you can turn back to Matthew 10, verse 16 and verse 21. And it says, "Behold, I send you out like sheep in the midst of wolves. Therefore, be as wise as serpents and as harmless as doves. And the brother will hand over the brother for death, and the father the child. Children will rise up against their parents and cause them to be put to death. These examples were written so we won't be caught off guard. Yeshua Messiah gave us instructions on how to act during these times of persecution. If you can turn over to Matthew 5, it's on page 723, Matthew 5 and verse 44. And it says, "But I say to you, love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do well to those who hate you, and pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you. But praise Yahweh, this persecution is for a great purpose, to build and strengthen us and prepare us for a position in Yahweh's kingdom. So stand up, rejoice, and remember the great words of encouragement from our overseer." In the second book of Israel, chapter 21, verse 144 and 146, it says, "The world will not rely on you, but you can rely on these prophecies. By holding strong to Yahweh, if you deny the house of Yahweh, you deny Yahweh. If you deny me or one of the little ones in the house of Yahweh, you deny Yahweh." You need to be courageous for Yahweh so you won't be cut off from him. Don't ever deny his name or his house. Those are what the beastly system is blaspheming to turn people away from his house. This is a time, brethren, not for sadness or gloominess. This is the time that the house of Yahweh should be rejoicing. The fact that we see these prophecies taking place, and we see ourselves being tested for the kingdom should be reasons for us to shout, "Hallelujah, Yahweh." We are in a showdown and in the worst time of trouble ever, but Yahweh is going to guide us every step of the way. I'd like to leave you with Matthew 16, verse 18, which says, "The gates of hell will not prevail against this last day's house of Yahweh." And with that, if you all please stand.
At this time, if you all remain standing, it's my privilege and honor to introduce to you son of Yisrayl Abel, Great Deacon Shalom Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. Today I'm going to be speaking on only believe. Now that's a quote that you hear from the churches. You know, they say, only believe. That's all you need to make it into the kingdom of God. Just believe. Alright? Now, where did they get this from? For my first scripture, if you turn over to Yachanan Mark 5, and you can see there, starting with verse 21, it talks about how Yeshua, he was walking through the land here, and people were coming up to him wanting to be healed and everything. And if you go down to verse 35, it says, "While he was still speaking, there came some from the ruler of the synagogue's house, who said, 'Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further?' As soon as Yeshua heard the word that was spoken, he said to the ruler of the synagogue, 'Do not be afraid, only believe.' Then he allowed no man to follow him except Kepha, Jacob, and Yachanan, the brother of Jacob. It says he came to the house of the ruler of the synagogue and saw the commotion and those who wept and wailed loudly. When he came in, he said to them, 'Why do you make this commotion and weep? The girl is not dead, but sleeps.' And they laughed him to scorn. But when he had put them all out, he took the father and the mother of the girl and those who were with him, and entered in where the girl was lying. Then he took the girl by the hand and said, which being interpreted means, she under the talit, arise. And immediately the girl rose up and walked, for she was 12 years of age. And they were astonished with complete amazement, but he gave them a strict warning not to let anyone know it, then commanded that something should be given to her to eat. So you can see there how he said to them, do not be afraid, only believe. And then the churches, they take this little statement and they run with it, and they say, well, that's all you need to get into the kingdom, is just believe. But they throw away the whole Book of Yahweh. They throw out everything and just say, well, all you have to do is believe. If you go over to Luke 24, verse 25, it says, then he said to them, O fools and slow of heart, to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Alright, now, another thing that they do is they sing this song on Sunday. I don't know if you've heard it before, but it says, trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus than to trust and obey. Alright, now they don't trust, obey, or believe the word of Yahweh. They say it's all been done away with. When Jesus came, he nailed those things to the cross. Alright, and so they throw it all away, but then they say, well, you have to trust, obey, and believe. If they did believe, or if they did obey the word of Yahweh, they would be keeping the Sabbath, or they would be keeping the Sabbath on Saturday instead of Sunday, and they wouldn't keep it anywhere else. They would keep it at Yahweh's house. But they're a bunch of deceivers. They're a bunch of deceivers and liars, and you can see this if you turn to Yachanan 8, and verse 44. It's on page 825. It says, you are of your teacher, who is Satan the devil, and whatever she who is your teacher desires, you will do. She was a martyr from the beginning, and remained not in the truth, because there is no truth in her. Therefore, when you speak your falsehoods, you speak her words, because she is a liar and the teacher of all lies. It says, yet because I tell you the truth, you do not believe me. Which of you convicts me of sin? So if I speak the truth, why do you not believe me? He who is of Yahweh hears Yahweh's words, the law and the prophets. Now you do not hear, because you are not of Yahweh. Alright, Yahweh didn't send them. They went out on their own. Alright, so what we need to do is overcome. If they overcome, come to Yahweh's house and actually repent and put these sins behind them, then they would make it in Yahweh's kingdom. If you turn over to Revelations 21, in verse 7, it says, he who overcomes will inherit all things, and I will be his father, and he will be my son. Now, if you look that word up, overcome means to get the better of, or to gain the superiority. And this is the same thing that Yahweh told Cain. If you remember, in Genesis 4, it's on page 3. Genesis 4:7, it says, if you do righteousness, will you not be accepted? If you do not do righteousness, sin is crouching at your door. The desire to sin is with you, but you must overcome it. Alright, so this is the same thing that Yeshua said in Revelations. Alright, that you have to overcome. You have to overcome this desire to sin, because it's going to be there, and that's what we have to overcome. Now, how we overcome? If you turn over to 1 Corinthians, 1 Corinthians chapter 15. It's on page 898. Verse 55, it says, the power over sin is the law. It says, O death, where is your sting? O Sheol, the grave, where is your victory? The sting of sin is death. The power over sin is the law. And thanks be to Yahweh, who gives us the victory through our King and High Priest Yeshua Messiah. It says, therefore, my beloved brothers, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of Yahweh, knowing that your labor is not in vain in Him. If you also go over to, you see that the power over sin is the law. If you turn over to 1 Yochanan 5, verse 4, it's on page 966. It says, and whoever is begotten of Yahweh overcomes the world. And this is the conquering power that has overcome the world, the faith he who is Yahweh gave. Who is he who overcomes the world but he who believes that Yeshua is the Son of Yahweh? So it's this faith. And the faith, if you turn over to Hebrews 11, verse 1 says, now the faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And if you look over to the side note, it says the system of religious truth itself. That's side note A. So it's the Book of Yahweh. You know, these laws, and following these laws is what's going to get you in the kingdom of Yahweh. If you go over to Yada 3, or Yada verse 3, it says, beloved, when I gave all diligence to write to you about the common salvation, I found it necessary to write to you and exhort you that you should earnestly contend for the faith which was once for all delivered to the saints. Alright, so we have to take hold of these things and apply them in our lives. And if you don't overcome, those who don't overcome will be cast out. If you turn over to Revelations, Revelations 21 and verse 8 says, but the fearful and unbelieving and the abominable and murderers and whoremongers and sorcerers and worshippers of gods, Elohim, and all liars will have their part in the lake that burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. If you flip the page to Revelations 22 verse 12, it says, and behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me to give every man according as his work will be. I am the first and the last, the beginning and the end. Blessed are those who keep his laws, that they may have right to the tree of life, and may enter in through the gates into the city. So all the others will be cast out, and you can see that in verse 15. For outside are dogs and sorcerers and whoremongers and murderers and worshippers of gods, and everyone who professes to love yet practices breaking the law. Another scripture, if you turn over to Luke 13, verse 24 through 30, it says, strive, contend for, exert oneself to enter in at the narrow gate. For many, I say to you, will seek to enter it and will not be able. When once the ruler of the house has risen up and shut the door, and you begin to stand outside and to knock at the door, and say, Teacher, teacher, open for us, he will answer and say to you, I do not know you, nor where you are from. Then you will begin to say, We ate and drank in your presence, and you were taught in our streets. But he will say, I tell you, I do not know who you are. Get away from me, all you workers of iniquity, who practice breaking the law of Yahweh. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth when you see Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and all the prophets in the kingdom of Yahweh, and yourselves thrust out. For when they will come from the east and the west, from the north and the south, and will sit down in the kingdom of Yahweh, and behold, there at last, which will be first, and there are the first, which will be last. Alright, so we have to overcome, we have to believe, we have to trust and obey the word of Yahweh, and we have to overcome our sins. And with that, if everyone will please stand, let's turn over to the great Khan Benjamin Krause Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom, great saints of Yahweh. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. You may be seated. All right. Woo! You got your pens and paper ready? Here we go again. You know, Yahweh's just pouring it on, but I'm going to tell you right now before I get started, this is a very exciting message today, but it's very serious as well. Because Yahweh is going to reveal something to you today in part, and more will be explained later on this. So if you don't get it all today, that's okay. You're not going to probably, but just be taking this information down. We've got to get ready for the Day of Atonement. We got to get ready for the Day of Atonement, okay? It's very, very, very important that we do. All right, if you remember last week, I left off on the mark of the beast. Who did their homework assignment? Yesterday on preparation day, read the mark of the beast. You know, the great Kohan Yedidia, you know, he harped and harped and harped on that constantly about reading the mark of the beast. Go back to the mark of the beast. The foundation of everything is laid out in that book. And I left out yesterday, it seemed like yesterday, last Sabbath, showing the gematria of Revelation 18:23 about the light of a candle, or the light of a lamp. Now this is the King James Version, you know, because this is how the world's going to actually learn as well. They got to see from their own and prove it out of their own scriptures that Yahweh is true and everyone else is a liar outside of the house of Yahweh. It says, the light of a candle shall not shine, no more at all in you, and the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. Speaking about New York City, as the mark of the beast tells you, for your merchants were the great men of the earth. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. For by their sorceries were all nations deceived. And of course it gives you the zip code of Manhattan, right in the epicenter, Times Square, right in the epicenter of everything that Pastor wrote about in the mark of the beast. And then Pastor also, Pastor, yes, because he wrote it, under the inspiration of our great Father Yahweh, and under the inspiration of Yeshua, says, and the great city was divided in this is how the King James read it, but it's talking about the city that's divided into three parts, New York City. And the great city, this is from the King James, was divided into three parts, and the cities of the nations fell, and the great Babylon came in remembrance, before it says God here, to give unto her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath. And yes, this is God's wrath, I guarantee you. This is not Yahweh's, okay? Yahweh's not a wrathful, he's not vengeful at all. And then it gives you 10179, which is also right there in Manhattan. In fact, right at J.P. Morgan, one of the great men of the earth. Okay. Let me skip a little bit of this here to get here. Last week I ran out of time, and this is where I was leaving off in chapter 18 of Revelation, verse 23. And if you'll notice, one of the versions where it talks about the great men of the earth, it actually calls them, it says, even the light from a lamp will never shine in you again. The voices of the bridegroom and his bride will not be heard in you again. For your merchants were the tycoons of the world, because all nations were deceived by your magic spells. Now that word tycoon, you know, it means an elite. Elite. great man, a lord. Okay, the lords. This is speaking of the lords and the gods of this earth. The great men, the rich men. If you remember sorceries again, let me just remind you, it was 666. The nations were deceived by the sorceries. And that word tycoon is also 666. Now there's a reason for that. And it's also, if you'll notice, the top number is 733. 733. Please write that down, okay? Very important that you're writing these numbers down because it's like a puzzle. You got to have all the pieces. And then you got to have the greatest teacher in the world that sees the whole picture to put those pieces in the proper place. But you've got to have the numbers down. We're painting by numbers. So, 733. Let's see what that means. It means wayfaring. It means traveler. Traveler. And it's from 732, and it means to travel or wayfaring, a wayfaring man. Also means wandering, wayfarer, and journeying. This will all start to tie in a minute. Here's one of the Masonic websites there, the northeastern corner. This is their newspaper. And if anybody here is familiar with the Masons, this is a very familiar term to them. This is one of their codes they use when they meet a fellow Mason that doesn't know whether or not, if they don't know if he doesn't have a ring on his finger, they'll just simply ask, "Are you a traveling man?" And if he says, "Yes, I'm a traveling man," then they know who he is. Here's one of their poems they wrote. Actually, I didn't read get the whole thing down. But I want you to notice what they say here. This pertinent part. I travel toward the east, the source of all light. The east. You remember the traditions of the east in Isaiah 2? You know, the kings of the east? You know, all the so-called knowledge that's found in the east? It says the source of all light, the source of all knowledge. I'm a traveling man. I am a traveling man. It's the only thing I know for sure. My insatiable curiosity and desire for knowledge are my ever-present companions on this trek. You know, think of Star Trek, okay? Traveling, 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 never weary, never ending. Remember the never ending story? Never ending. Now that's 733 in the Hebrew and 732. Here we are in the Greek. It means a sodomite, a homosexual. From 1 Corinthians 6:9, as our great teacher taught us. Now, just the other night, I was standing out in the parking lot here on the 44, on the beautiful 44 acres. I'm so glad I'm not up to 44 hectares over there in Rome at the Vatican. I'd rather be here. And here's what Yahweh. Now, remember, I was going to bring you this thing about the elite, about the tycoons last week. And then Yahweh gave us this miraculous sign. Yahshua gave us this miraculous sign on Wednesday night, 9/14. You all see that? It's called a pyramid. Look at it closely. Not only is it a pyramid, but it's actually three-dimensional. And if you'll notice, there's a capstone on it already. What does that mean? Well, if you notice, there's a Masonic lodge there with their pyramid. Now, I want you to understand something about this pyramid. You have to go back to Nimrod and the building of a society that's totally opposed to Yahweh's way. Now, you know there's a showdown, right? Do you know there's a showdown coming? You better be ready for 10:10. We better be ready for 10:10. Day of Atonement. The evening of 10:10. The night that this was seen, 9:14, it means to divide, to separate, to distinguish, differ, to make or put a difference, to sever utterly. It means to make a distinction. Yes, there is going to be a separation of the wicked and the just. A distinction is getting ready to be made between the house of Baal and the house of Yahweh, and there's not going to be no doubt in your mind when this is over. Do you understand me? No doubt. Yahweh will leave no room for doubt who the house of Yahweh, who he's working with. Now, I want you to notice something else about that picture. The picture time was 1933 because somehow or another my iPhone got set, the settings got messed up to military time instead of regular time. And if you know, 730 or 1933 is actually 733. And I just read you the definition of 733, did I not? It was in the gematria of the tycoons. They're sodomites and they're travelers. They're roamers. The Roman army, remember? Traveling men. Traveling, looking for whom they may devour, what they may devour, and a money-making mission. A money-making enterprise. Now I want to remind you something, and this year is 5776 on the Hebrew calendar. And I've brought this information before about the Great Pyramid at Giza. It's on the back of every dollar bill. And the only difference is here is the capstone is not on the pyramid yet, because their great enterprise, their great work was not complete. Well, guess what? Yahshua has shown us 2016, they told you, is the capstone year, did they not? That pyramid is not missing the capstone that Yahshua showed us. Now I want to show you, we're at 5776 in the Hebrew calendar. This is a man, he wrote a book on the Great Pyramids. He did the first measurements. His name is W.M. Flinders Petrie. Okay, this is a very old book. It's called Pyramids and Temples of Giza. And I'm reading from the chapter about the Great Pyramid at Giza, this one that I just showed you. And I want to just show you the measurement. He says the mean base, and he gives this 968.8 divided by something inches. This yields a height of 5776.7 inches. 5776.7 inches with the capstone on it. That was his measurements with a capstone. If you remember, we are in the Hebrew year 5776. It began on the 13th of September 2015 and will end at sundown 2nd of October 2016. Now I'm going to skip some of this. You know, I wanted to talk more about the great men, and we will get into it, but I want to give you a preview. This word capitalism. It's 323. You remember the 323 reindeer, do you not? How many of you have a copy of this book right here? It's called The Keys of This Blood. Pastor references this, been referencing it for years, by Malachi Martin. Pope John Paul II, it says, versus Russia and the West for control of the New World Order. The New World Order. The New World Order. Now, lo and behold, amazingly enough, on page 323, he talks about the international chorus of internationalists. Let me get my glasses. And he says, the goal is to eliminate border controls on the movement of people and goods, to free up capital movement and trade and services, and to grant the right of establishment. Notice who he quotes here. The Norwegian Prime Minister? Wasn't that where the reindeer were at? Huh. He says Norwegian Prime Minister Gro Harlem Brundtland, who, by the way, right at this moment as we speak, is the head chief of the climate change deal they have going in the UN. For one, has speculated that in light of the extended contacts between East and West, we have a vision of a future market, not merely of 350 million people, but of 700 million people in Europe alone. Now, I want you to notice something else that Malachi Martin exposed in this book on page 320. He says the only purpose of NATO, on which the United States alone at this time spent $150 billion annually for the maintenance of American forces in Europe, has been to discourage any attempt by the Russia to interfere by military invasion with a free market economy. You know the iniquity of their trading that Yaketsky talked about? This trading, this merchandising and trading, these trade wars that they have. Okay, it's what it's all about. It's all about this money. But also here, he exposes more. He says, similarly, the booming economies of Japan, Germany, and the United States, economies that anchor the present uneven evolutionary development of interdependence in the rest of the world, depend on that all-important international commodity, oil. Thus, when the possibility arose in the 1980s that the bloody Iran-Iraq war would seriously interrupt international trade in oil, the presence of American military and naval power in the Persian Gulf was required for the duration. Remember, hurt not the oil, right? And our free trade, our ability to, every elite's dream is to go out and be able to trade their wares and sell them everywhere, their Christmas stuff. By the way, this is an update on how much we've been paying for NATO. This is in this year, $30 trillion and counting. $30 trillion to protect our interests of trade and oil. Now, remember these zip codes went to Manhattan, right? And I want to remind you, this was brought before, that the meaning of Manhattan says place of inebriation. Anybody here ever been inebriated? Well, if you don't know what it means to be made drunk, to intoxicate, to confuse. Remember, New York is the second Babylon, is it not? Pastor writes about this in the Mark of the Beast. Now, I want to show you the first person that ever came to Manhattan. The first European to ever go to Manhattan. Now, remember Columbus and all them. This guy was in competition with Columbus. This guy's from France. Columbus was from Spain. And then there was others that were going around trying to find trade routes and places to steal people's things and sell things and make a bunch of money. Here was the first guy, and this is in the Mark of the Beast on page 131. Pastor shows us that Giovanni de Verrazzano, he entered New York Harbor in 1524. 1524, and he even has a bridge there named after him that connects Staten Island and Brooklyn. Used to be the largest suspension bridge in the world. Double-decker, with 6 lanes on top and bottom, each 12 total lanes. Now, why is that important? 1524. Could you write that down? Because 1524, if I can find it here. 1524, here it is. It means a revolution of time, an age. That word 1524, the 524, Columbus came to America in 1492, which was 524 years ago. 524 years ago. I'm trying to get these little things in your mind right now. And like I said, you're just going to get a preview. And I've shown this before many times. 1492, it means seeing that becomes knowing, then is a gateway to grasp spiritual truth. Seeing that becomes knowing and is a gateway to grasp spiritual truth. How many of you have ever heard of the letter pi? It's a Greek letter. I'm not a mathematician either, but you'll learn something. The letter pi is the 16th letter of the Greek alphabet. Here's how it looks. It's right up, right here. You see that right there? And it's called a gate. This letter pi is a gate. A gate. You've been hearing a lot about gates, right? Gates and doors this year. Because it's always the first letter of this word gate or town or temple. Columbus Day is on 10/10 this year. It's 10/10, Columbus Day. Same day Day of Atonement starts. And I want to be able to show you here. If you notice on the 10th month calendar here, it talks about the ultimate showdown of righteousness versus evil being played out now. 10th month, Day of Atonement begins, 10th day at sundown. Banks are closed because it's Columbus Day. "10/10" means in Greek a member of a council, counselor. It's from this word here, bouleo, which is 10:11, and it means to take counsel. And it's from 10:12, and actually 10:12 is when Columbus discovered America. On October 12th, 1492, Columbus, they first shouted, "Land, land," when they saw the West Indies. And I want you to notice what it means. It means properly a resolved plan. A resolved plan, purposely arranging all physical circumstances, which guarantees every scene of life's works to his eternal purpose. In other words, it shows that everything that is done, even in the realm of man, shows that Yahweh is always in charge. Yahweh is in full control. It says it's more than Yahweh's immutable plan of physical circumstances. It always also includes Yahweh's purpose in them, and hence, now get this, arranging all the physical scenes of history before creation. Yahweh made sure that all of these things that are being done were done and laid out so perfectly that we could actually see from the landmarks, from the highways, from everything, that Yahweh's in full control and who he's working with. Now here's 10:10 in the Hebrew. It means the house of Baal. the house of Baal. Remember, there's a showdown going to take place between the house of Yahweh and the house of Baal. I'm really having to skip through a lot here, but I just want to kind of get you ready, because we've got to be ready, because there's going to be a showdown. Did you know this week, this coming week, they're setting up the Temple of Baal in New York City? Okay, you heard about it back in April, but they put it off. And they put it off for a reason. Because now is the time for the showdown. Do you get it? It says, New York. This is from their own website. It says, New York, you are ancient Egypt, but an Egypt turned inside out. For she erected pyramids of slavery, and you erect pyramids of democracy, with the vertical organ pipes of your skyscrapers all meeting at the point of infinity of liberty. Here's where they're putting their New York City Hall Plaza, September 19, 2016, is where they're putting it up, which is just south of Times Square. I'm wondering, now, I got to get you ready for something. How many of you have ever heard of this place in New York City? It's called Columbus Circle. It's 180 feet wide. It's got the statue of Christopher Columbus in this big circle, which was, by the way, made by this man who shows you in here that he was a skull and bonesman. It's on Wikipedia. You can read about him. William Phelps Eno. He's the creator of the stop sign, traffic, all that stuff. It's 180 feet wide. And when you take 180 and you times it by, because in order to figure out what the circumference of a circle is, you must times it by pi. And pi, write this down, is 3.14. So Columbus Circle, 180 feet times 3.14 equals 525. Now when you subtract 525 from this year, only these numbers can only work this year, by the way. Subtract 525 and you get 14. Let's see. Might be wrong there. I'm sorry. It's 565.2. So 2016 minus 565 is 1451. 1451 is when Columbus was born, in AY 1451. He discovered America in 1492, which was 524 years ago. And you remember, 524 means circle or age. Circle or age. I want to show you one more thing. And like I said, I don't have time to, man, these things, they take time. But Yahweh's going to reveal these things to his house. Just give me just one more minute. I got to get this in here. Not sure what's going on with this. Okay. I need to show you two things. From Times Square to the house of Yahweh is 1,730 miles. Write it down, please. I don't have a lot of time. From Columbus Circle to the house of Yahweh is 1,731. So there's only 1 mile difference. 1730, 1731. In Gematria, house of Yahweh is 1731. Write it down. I'll just give you another little appetizer here. But be ready. It's going to be fully explained. And you need to be ready for Day of Atonement. 1731. It means a basket. It's from this Hebrew word here, which is 1730. 17, 30, and 31 go together. And it means beloved. Beloved. Who's up there on that billboard in Times Square? Is it not Yeshurun, beloved Israel? He's going to show you that there's no mistaking this. There's no mistaking this. They've come full circle. And we're going to prove it definitely that the house of Yahweh, you've got to get here. If you don't get here, there's no hope for life at all. They've come full circle and their time is up. 10:10, you need to be ready for Day of Atonement. We need to be ready for Day of Atonement. I've got a lot more proof. I didn't have time today, but I've got a lot more proof. And I'm telling you, Yahweh is going to pile it on, and there's not going to be any doubt. There's not going to be no doubt whatsoever who Yahweh's working with and who's going to win this showdown. Are you ready for the showdown? At this time, I'd like to turn it over to you. It's been a pleasure and a great privilege to speak to you. I'd like to turn it over to the great Kohan, Yisrayl Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may all be seated. Well, in the news, we see sin growing at its peak, as Yahshua said it would be, greater than in the days of Noah. And keep in mind, there's always this on the news of Zika, but they really say they don't know what it is. And in the first article, you'll see a doctor say, we really don't know what it is yet. But obviously, we know that mosquitoes, they suck blood. They land on your arm, they suck blood, they go to the next person, and obviously there's already blood in them. You can have a miniature blood transfusion, so to speak. But this spray that they're trying to convince everyone, we need to spray so you don't get Zika. Because if you get Zika, you'll get microcephaly. You could have these all kinds of deformities in your children. Here in Abelin, now they say West Nile virus. If you get West Nile, you'll have vomiting, some kind of stomach cramps and so forth. But if we spray, your kidneys may fail, your liver may explode, or your eyes may bleed, one or the other, but we'll get rid of one. Well, they're trying to convince you that don't get this disease, we need to spray. Well, people are standing up. Puerto Rico is standing up against it. That's where the Zika was at first when they started standing up against this spray. The people of Florida are standing up against it. Now, they're spraying by air. Some counties have said they're not doing this, but yes, they are. It's shown they're spraying by air. They even show the airplane spraying, and one lady makes the comment that it's making my tongue swell, and she's standing before the city council, and she's irritated. She's upset, and they're saying, quit spraying us. So they're telling them we'd rather live with this risk of Zika than what you're giving us right now. And keep in mind, for those of you that don't know, they've been spraying in Abelin also. It's not a hidden thing. They sprayed last year, and they're spraying this year. But keep in mind, if you see honeybees dying anywhere, call the office and report that immediately if you see honeybees dying, because next we go to the YPN special report of the bee farm in South Carolina where 2.5 million bees died. And of course, the lady makes it very clear, no bees, no food. And the spray is killing the bees. Now, which would you rather have, mosquitoes or bees? Obviously, you have to have bees. You have to have them. That's what helps pollinate the food. Then Pastor mentioned last week about soldiers committing suicide, the CBS special report that was ran about that, 20 per day. Now those are casualties of war. Those are people that are going to, remember, this is supposed to bring peace, this war, and it's breaking them down so severely. Once they are out of the service of the military, they can't deal with life. They're actually ending their own life. So think of what can bring peace but yet destroy lives. Well, war is actually not saving anyone's life, and it's destroying lives. And then bullycide. For those of you that have taught the peaceful solution, which everyone here does, you know that is when students commit suicide due to bullying in school. Well, they want you to think that's under control, but again this week, a 9-year-old, a 3rd grader, took his own life due to being bullied. And that was in West Virginia. That's not an isolated thing, though. It's continually taking place. And then if you have a Samsung Galaxy 7, watch very closely what's taking place. One man is in the grocery store and his pocket catches on fire from the battery in his phone. Those are very dangerous. If you have one, watch this, and they're saying bring them back so something can be done about it. But whatever you do, don't ignore it because they are catching fire. Then a massive sinkhole in Florida. Once again, Florida. This is a large phosphate company. They had a sinkhole open up underneath their 215 million gallon waste pond. This is contaminated water. Well, when that sinkhole opened up, where did the wastewater go? It went into the aquifer. Now, the phosphate company is saying underground water moves slowly, so you should still be able to drink the water. Now, if you believe that, there's still swampland to buy in Florida, obviously. But also coming out in the news, former Secretary of State Colin Powell's emails were recently hacked. And in his email, he made a statement that Israel has at all times 200 nuclear weapons aimed at Tehran in Iran. Now, his representatives of his grouping confirmed that this email is true, and Colin Powell does verify that yes, Israel does have 200 nuclear weapons aimed at Iran at all times. And if you remembered, Ahmadinejad years ago said, what would Iran do with a nuclear bomb? Polish it? Because Israel has way more than we have. So obviously they know what's going on. But war is big business. And of course, with every business, you have expos. Well, they just had a recent military expo in South Korea. Over 35 countries were there, 200 companies attended. Now, the United States owns 30% of this business, and it is a business, and it is big business. It is the highest growing, profiting business that a person can think of. In fact, since 9/11, there has been $4.79 trillion spent on war. $4.79 trillion spent on war. And then, of course, we have what's going on in Syria and the United States and Russia. Of course, the peace agreement, this treaty, this roadmap to peace, as John Kerry, the Secretary of State, now said, it went into implementation September the 12th. That was earlier this week. And they're actually monitoring it to see how it's going to work. But watch the article very closely. They say they don't really know what's behind the agreements. These things don't really work. But it's going to be interesting because the United States are turning their back on Saudi Arabia, so to speak. And then these mercenaries that, if you remember Vladimir Putin speaking about, mercenaries fight for whoever's paying them. You pay them, they fight for you. And that's what's going on in Syria. Well, the United States is cutting them off. So it's going to be very interesting to see, since Saudi Arabia has bought more weaponry than any other country in the Middle East. Also, with the expo, watch the targeting area. Every business, they target an area to market their product. Well, we know that a third of mankind is going to die in and around that fourth part of the earth, and a lot of people have already died. But their marketing area, that targeting area, is Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. So very interesting how they're doing these things. If we could go ahead and play the news.
Pay close attention. What you're about to see is Bible prophecy being fulfilled.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you news as it relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yisrayl Hawkins. Well, Zika, exploding phones, preteen suicides, and the cost of war. What do all these have in common? Well, they are all sign of the times that we're in, with the technology increasing, the disease, and wars increasing, all in this generation. But of course, we're going to start off our broadcast today with the ongoing spread of the Zika virus. Well, Singapore is the latest to experience the virus, with its health ministry reporting the total cases now standing at 215. With 26 more cases of infections being identified. The World Health Organization is voicing concern over the quick spread of the virus, which has also prompted a global health emergency.
Malaysian Health Ministry has confirmed its first case of the virus. The disease was first detected in Brazil in 2015 and has since been detected in many other countries.
That's right. Well, here in the U.S., Congress is battling overspending to combat the Zika virus. In fact, a Florida Congressman, David Jolly, held up a canister of mosquitoes. Now, they weren't carrying the Zika virus, but he said they could be. Meanwhile, in Miami Beach, Florida, mosquito spraying was put off a few days due to the public protesting.
Residents testified to local authorities how they have been affected physically from the spraying of the insecticide Nailed. Now, one woman said that her tongue was so numb and shaky that she was about ready to go to the emergency room. Carlos Jimenez, the Miami-Dade mayor, told residents that he was assured by public health experts the amount of nail used in aerial spraying was harmless and has proven effective in the actual reduction of mosquitoes.
Interesting. Well, Mayor Jimenez said we cannot just pick and choose where to spray. There is a science to this. Dr. Christine Curry, an OBGYN who's delivered a baby with microcephaly, addressed the protesting crowd. She told the crowd, Zika is real and we don't understand it fully.
Well, now for more on the bees that were killed by the spraying for mosquitoes, we turn over to our field correspondent who's on assignment in South Carolina, Rebecca Matthews, for an informative interview with the bee farmer that suffered the loss of millions of bees. Rebecca, where exactly are you right now?
We're here at Flowertown Bee Farm and Supply, where recently, within the last week, they were just aerial sprayed by the county for the Zika virus, and we're about to go in and see what took place.
At this time, the county says that they do not have any more scheduled aerial spraying for Dorchester County, and that is very good because without the bees, humans wouldn't exist more than 4 years.
That is an astounding statement. And is that because of the importance that bees have with the pollination leading to the food supply?
That's exactly what it is. Without bees, we won't have food to eat.
So you truly have one of the most important jobs in the entire world.
Yes, I have to be a voice for the honeybees because humans have to protect them. Instead of destroying them, we have to make good choices on how to protect our honeybees.
Absolutely. So if you see these sprayings continuing on, where do you see our honeybees in the future?
Well, you know, obviously with the pictures that I've shown the public, they won't survive. They can't survive these chemical sprays.
So to our audience who's watching right now, and if they're sitting there thinking, what can I do to help, what would you tell them?
I would say educate yourself about honeybees. Get informed. Find out what's going on in your county. If you've got honeybees, get in touch with your city and your county and get on a call list. Get registered so that even if you only have one hive of bees, they're so valuable. Just protect them and let everybody know, hey, I've got bees. I've got bees over here. Let's work together as a team to protect these little honeybees.
Well, Anita, we really appreciate you being here with us today, and we are going to speak up and do everything that we can to help save the bees.
Thank you. And as being a voice for the bees, the media is my biggest outlet. That's the most important thing to me out of this whole situation is let's do what we have to do. Let's work together and protect the honeybees.
I'm Rebecca Matthews, live here in Summerville, South Carolina with YPN News. Back to you.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people realize how important the bees are in the pollination process and all the foods that we eat. So right. Hopefully we can get a handle on this and kind of protect that bee population for our sakes. Well, we'll now take a look at the report that we brought you previously on veteran suicides, the increase and the struggle that many suffer with after returning from active duty. Well, suicides by veterans occur on average 20 times a day. One veteran, Frank Lefnesky, after 2 tours in Iraq and trying to drink himself past the demons that darkened his mind, and after a second member of his old platoon committed suicide, well, he finally got help. With his therapist, he can finally talk about his PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder instead of being haunted by it.
Lefnesky said in an interview with CBS News, I was immobilized. It's like being frozen, just watching time pass. It's crazy. Now, Staff Sergeant Lefnesky hit his own rock bottom and contemplated taking his own life. He said, as he tried to hold back tears, I had a great person tell me once, they're killing us over there and they're still killing us over here. And that guy told me, don't let it happen. Don't give them that satisfaction.
He continued, I used to be jokey. I used to be goofy. I was Frank from North Scranton, and I know I won't be that again. Well, another soldier, Jenny Pakanowski, an Army combat medic, described the battle she fought once she got back home. She said, for a long time after I got back, I isolated myself in a cabin and drank all the time. Then at one point, I decided I was going to try to do everything possible. She said everything possible to feel better. But if nothing worked, I was going to kill myself. She concluded, God, this is harder to talk about than bombs.
Katan, another consequence of war. Yeah. Well, Samsung Galaxy Note 7 phones have been catching fire. The company said that it's a manufacturing flaw at the source of the problem. The government is warning most owners to turn their phones off. The lithium-ion batteries that power many of these devices, including cell phones and other electronic devices, have come under scrutiny.
Well, the batteries are unique because ions in the battery travel from the positive side to the negative side, which is separated by an electrolyte layer when charging. The process is reversed during use. Well, Samsung said the positive and negative side came into contact with each other, causing the issue. Walter van Schulkwitz, who studies electrochemistry, said this is a short circuit that would generally be a flaw in the manufacturing process that didn't get caught during quality control.
The lithium-ion battery is popular because it's lightweight and can store large amounts of energy, powering electronics like laptops and hoverboards. Recently, there was a Jeep that caught fire after the owner left his phone inside to charge. Now, Schulkwitz told CBS News that the failure rates of most of these lithium-ion battery designs are about 1 out of 10 to 20 million.
Yeah, but that's definitely scary for the few
that
actually suffer, the fires and the scares when these batteries actually catch fire. So far, Samsung has reported 35 cases of the Samsung Galaxy catching fire. The company has said for privacy reasons, it will not disclose where those batteries were made.
Well, as for the wars overseas themselves, there is talk of trying to quell them. Larry McGee has our story on the peace talks on Syria and several other developments. Larry?
Major news this week regarding the effort to cease the destruction in and of Damascus. A multi-step agreement was signed this week between Russia and America following talks between the two nations in Geneva conducted by Secretary John Kerry and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. The two announced a collective intention to cease hostilities in Syria on September 12th, as well as an agreement to join forces in bombing certain common enemies in the war-torn nation. Echoing quartet language, certain stipulations in the agreement are being referred to as a cornerstone of a roadmap to peace in the region, namely that the Syrian government bring a complete halt to its airstrikes against opposition forces. Another key component of the deal is said to be the American decision to sacrifice its controversial support of al-Nusra in preservation of other pawns. Supposed U.S. ally and Middle East moneymen Saudi Arabia are attempting to pivot off the move and hire and recruit the powerful group into their own ranks, urging al-Nusra leaders to declare that their objectives are the objectives of the Syrian people. The loose and shaky alliances between mercenary groups and their puppeteers is characterized by infighting, however, creating a chaotic web of greed and disloyalty that makes it difficult to say who is genuinely for who or how long any supposed alliances may hold together. The Russian and American announcement is once more big news, but analysts have been quick to point out that there have been other such agreements made by the two powers in the past. But the destruction of Damascus is still ongoing. The ages of those whose lives are being destroyed by bullying is reaching a heartbreaking low. This week, a 9-year-old child committed suicide after having undergone months of torment in school. Jackson Grubbs was found dead in his West Virginia home by his parents due to injuries that police say appear to have been self-inflicted. Jackson is reported to have fought back against his tormentors, but that was apparently insufficient as a solution, and there were reports of a change in the third grader even prior to the tragedy. Jackson's grandmother posted a letter from the young man's sister to social media which read, "I miss my baby brother. I wish that he was here today. Fly high, brother. We miss you so much and we love you." The young lady concluded by asking for bullying to stop now. Just as much as people's hearts are sinking from the Earth's activities, the Earth itself is also sinking. Recently, a massive sinkhole opened up underneath the storage pond in Florida, draining 200 million gallons of contaminated water into one of the state's main underground drinking supplies. Mulberry Mosaic Plant is the actual location of the incident. Authorities say the sinkhole manifested beneath a pile of gypsum and subsequently contaminated the large body of water. David Jetterson, a former senior director of the Environmental and Phosphate Project, says, however, that groundwater moves very slowly and thus absolutely no one is at risk. For IPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan Jeff, back to you.
I guess we'll see how long it actually takes them, if they can, to clean up the water supply since it's in an underground aquifer.
And what's even worse now, Katan, they're saying that there's possibility this water was radioactive.
Well, that just adds to their problems. Well, we've heard a lot about presidential candidate Hillary Clinton's emails, but new light is being shed on former Secretary of State Colin Powell's as well. The leaked emails reveal information about Israel's nuclear program and its primary target, Iran. The hacking group DC Leaks obtained emails Powell had sent to a business partner, and in them he admitted that Tel Aviv had 200 nuclear weapons pointed at Iran.
Wow.
Yeah.
He also openly disagreed with the Israeli Prime Minister's comments during his 2012 UN speech, in which Benjamin Netanyahu said, speaking of nuclear weapons, Iran could produce the nuclear detonator, the fuse, in a lot less time, maybe under a year, maybe only a few months. Now, Powell remarked in the email that this statement was exaggerated.
Well, Israel's policy on its own military program has remained obscure over the years. Experts estimate they may have as many as 400 nuclear weapons, but the actual number is uncertain. An additional email sent by Powell also acknowledged Iran has the right to enrich uranium. He also approved of the nuclear deal with Iran.
We know that more than 400,000 people have died and millions more have lost their lives in the bloody war Syria has been fighting since 2011. Now, this next video, however, suggests why the war has not been brought to an end by the major world powers, and even its title, Katan, gives us a little bit of a clue. It's called War on Syria, Making a Killing. Take a look.
Syria has been witnessing a bloody war for the past 5 years. The unrest has already claimed hundreds of thousands of lives, and caused millions more displaced. The Syrian government blames a number of foreign countries for fueling terrorism in Syria. Now, a report is out by journalists from the Balkan Investigative Reporting Network and the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project. According to the document, some Eastern European countries have sold over $1.3 billion of arms to Middle Eastern countries in the past 4 years. They were later supplied to Syrian militants. The trade is said to have been coordinated by the American Secret Service, the CIA. The weaponry includes thousands of AK-47 assault rifles, machine guns, mortar shells, rocket launchers, and anti-tank missiles, as well as aging T-55 and T-72 tanks. The munitions were shipped from Bosnia, Bulgaria, Croatia, Czech Republic, Montenegro, Slovakia, Serbia, and Romania. The arms were sent by sea or air to Saudi Arabia, Jordan, the United Arab Emirates, or Turkey, and then shipped to the war zone in Syria. They were mostly sent to Saudi Arabia, one of the main supporters of anti-government militants in Syria. Saudi Arabia alone secretly imported 18,500 rocket launchers, 10,000 AK-47 guns, 300 tanks, and 250 anti-aircraft guns from the European countries. Other European countries have already sold huge quantities of arms and ammunition to Saudi Arabia, arming the oil-rich US-backed monarchy to the teeth. The purchased arms from Eastern Europe have been routed to Syria through 2 secret command hubs in Jordan and Turkey. The Saudis have also airdropped weaponry to their mercenaries in Yemen. Saudis and Turks have supplied arms to the extremist groups in Syria, which are not supported by the US. The United States itself has also directly purchased large quantities of arms from Central and Eastern Europe and sent them to Syrian militants. they ultimately fall into the hands of terrorist groups such as Ansar al-Sham, the al-Qaeda-affiliated Jabhat al-Nusra, rebranded as Fatah al-Sham, and Daesh Takfiri terrorists. Such arms trafficking may have breached EU and international laws on arms exports.
Well, war is definitely big business.
And making a killing, they are. Well, North Korea has pushed the button again. On the morning of September 9th, 2016, Kim Jong-un and his military officers watched the testing of their fifth nuclear weapon. The North Korean state television celebrated the test as a success. The bomb was the strongest yet, however, still smaller than the bomb that destroyed Hiroshima, Japan in World War II. But the North Koreans are advancing their nuclear program at a rapid pace and seeking to fit a compact warhead onto a missile.
President Obama, just returning from the G20 and East Asia summits, called the test provocative and destabilizing. The president also said the United States condemns North Korea's September 9th nuclear test in the strongest possible terms as a grave threat to regional security and to international peace and stability. Now, pointing out that they are the only country to have tested nuclear weapons in the 21st century.
Interesting. An emergency session of the United Nations Security Council in New York was called on Sunday, September 11th, to address this situation. China, a strong ally to North Korea, urged the council to act carefully in their response to the missile launch. U.S. Ambassador Samantha Power told members of the press North Korea is seeking to perfect its nuclear weapons and their delivery vehicles so that it can hold the region and the world hostage under threat of nuclear strike.
Kim Jong-un is also focusing on increasing the country's ballistic missile capacity. The country launched 3 earlier such missiles during the week while the G20 summit was underway in China. Now, what is feared by the UN is that with each test, North Korea's capabilities become better and better.
While President Obama promised more sanctions will be imposed on North Korea as a result of its latest nuclear tests, Russia is urging the international community to find new ways to respond to Pyongyang's aggression. In a statement, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said the current situation shows that maybe diplomats should be more creative than just responding with sanctions again on any aggravation of the situation.
He expressed deep concern at such retaliatory actions, saying, "I am convinced that by condemning those dangerous exploits of the North Korean government, we must refrain from steps that could lead to a further escalated tensions and put this region on the verge of, we may say, armed opposition." Now, case in point, Katan, Pyongyang has said that their latest moves were in response to the hostile policies of Washington and Seoul.
So we're seeing that tit for tat.
Absolutely.
Taking place amongst the nations. That's right. Well, Foreign Minister also reminded everyone to seek hope in the 6-party talks aiming to dismantle the North Korea nuclear program. The talks have been suspended since 2008, however, when North Korea walked out of negotiations, and attempts to restart have been as recent as 2013, but without success.
As if tensions on the Korean peninsula weren't high enough, South Korea just held an international arms exhibition outside the capital of Seoul to help boost their arms exports. Among their top priorities, South Korea is focusing on arms deals with the United States and other major weapons traders.
Interesting. While the country had been experiencing gains in arms exports in previous years, 2015 saw exports fall below $3.5 billion dollars. More than 200 companies from 35 countries gathered for Defense Expo Korea 2016. With a healthy demand, organizers are hopeful for South Korea's weapons sales.
Now, countries have always tried to show their power through a display of military force. With globalization, the arms race is getting more intense. A spokesperson for Korea Defense Industry Association at the show was indicating the focus for South Korea is their arms exports.
That's right. Well, the United States, South Korea's strong ally, remains by far the leading global arms dealer with more than 30% of the market share. South Korea has already unveiled plans to expand military cooperation with the U.S., and Lee Hyol-sub of Korea Aerospace Industries commented, "The U.S. Air Force project will be the biggest defense export in South Korean history."
He continued, "The importance of the U.S. market cannot be stressed enough. If we succeed in winning this project, we will obtain key leverage to expand to many other countries in the Middle East and Asia, which are waiting for the U.S. decision."
The global arms trade is a huge business, now reaching $100 billion a year and growing. As the weapons business grows, well, new clients are being sought, particularly in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East.
And to give you an idea, Katan, of just how much is being spent on war, the U.S. spent $4.79 trillion on wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, Pakistan, and Syria since 9/11. Wow. And that doesn't include money spent on veterans or any war loans.
Oh, wow, amazing.
Well, in 1934, a group of physicists received their patent for the first nuclear bomb. At the same time, a child was born. Over the next 82 years, both would develop. One for destruction and annihilation of mankind, the other for the saving of mankind. All of this has come down to the very days we are living in. Soon we will see the nuclear bombs destroy and the house of Yahweh, led by Yisrayl Hawkins, protected. You have the opportunity to be part of the greatest gathering ever in the history of mankind. Contact the house of Yahweh today and find out how.
When you contact the House of Yahweh, don't forget to request your free copies of the monthly newsletter and the Prophetic Word magazine. To contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. Or you can call them at 1-800-613-9494. Or visit them on any of their websites at www.yahweh.com, www.yisraelhawkins.com, www.yahwehsbranch.com, or visit them at www.ypnnews.com. You can also email them at info@yahweh.com. And for all calls outside the United States, please call the number on your screen. And don't forget the latest and greatest study resource to the Holy Scriptures, the Yisrael Says program, where you can find that at www.yisraelsays.com.
Well, don't go anywhere. Up next is another exciting message from Yisrayl Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
And I'm Katan Alexander.
Thanks for watching.
At this time, if everyone would please stand, I would like to introduce the greatest teacher in the world, the great Kahan Yisrayl Hawkins.
Shalom, everyone! Wow! Let's go. They're all yours, Yahweh. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. I want you to remember, as you're seeing this now, of course it's showing us how close we are to nuclear war, and I don't expect it to go much further here. From what we see in prophecy, what we see in the numbers that's being brought forth, there's just no way it can. I hope you paid close attention to that atonement message. You need to study it yourself. Benya called me the other day and said, or she texted me and I called her back, but she said she opened her calendar to the next month and she said I almost flipped, and I said, well, I was intending to bring that out. But anyway, we talked about it, and then I started looking up numbers, and of course it this was so intriguing what was brought today by the great Kohan Benjamin Krause Hawkins. It's remarkable the things that Yahweh shows us in the numbers as well as the prophecies. Now, it wouldn't mean anything without the prophecies. It wouldn't mean anything at all. But with the prophecies, it shows us in a deeper way some things that are going to take place, and shows you that Yahweh is guiding this thing. And of course, that means something, because Yahweh says he's going to protect his house, and this earth is soon going to be burned and few men left. And that few people left is Yahweh's house and his preordained calling that I want you to understand today if I can get to it. But the seventh year, atonement starts this seventh year. Be prepared for it. And when I say be prepared, I didn't mean to go to Walmart or any place like that, drive to town. I know preparation day means that to some. We need to quit it. We need to quit watching television when we're supposed to be working. We need to quit watching television when we're supposed to be studying too. You'd be better off to get your calendar and look at it than you would watching that television set, especially on just entertainment. This has been a great year, sixth year. All of those of you who have raised gardens in the House of Yahweh area or worked in the garden, I was trying to point out this what was taking place right now, because we've got an overabundance of food. The cafeterias, freezers and refrigerators are full. The canners can't keep up. We need another crew to run another cannery or two, and they'll be here shortly. You know, they're on the way. Yahweh says they are. But the sixth year, if you remember, I haven't looked it up in a long time, so you might have to help me and look it up yourself. Okay? Okay. But if I remember correctly, Yahweh said the sixth year would be a blessed year, and he would overproduce. He'd give us blessings that we couldn't put all of it in our barns on the sixth year. Well, what is occurring right now in the sixth year? Yahweh keeps his word. And he wants you to keep your word. Speaking of food, for years we've wanted to bring out some recipes that from all over the world. And I said this years ago, and looks like it's going to finally mature now. But if you are from a foreign land, or you know how to cook a foreign dish that we don't have here, and you know how to cook it to perfection, or maybe near perfection, then we'd like to have your recipe and put it in. We've got, the House of Yahweh has an excellent cookbook, but it's I've been wanting to get one from every place in the world, and we have members now all over the world that are here. I know many of you are here, and many more coming. It'll be here this feast, of course. But if you want to write down your recipe and call the office, and we'll give you instructions as to how to write it down. We've got it all written up for you, exactly how to write it down. When I was teaching cooking, not too many years ago, I was teaching cooking at Cisco Junior College, and I insisted on the people. I showed them how to never forget to put an egg in your cake, you know. Well, how do you do that? Well, you lay the egg out, right? But I say if you got 6 ingredient recipes, put out 6 bowls, and if you put the salt in the bowl, we'll put your salt shaker behind it, so you'll know that's salt I put in the bowl. Don't take a chance on it, and it be sugar in your bowl or flour in your bowl, and then you got 2 cups of flour and 1 cup of sugar, and it's supposed to be the other way. But I'd make them lay it out in these bowls. And the ones who followed what I told them to do, they never made a mistake. They got it right. If you'll remember that, please. You might even say on the recipe, be sure and lay out 6 bowls or 5 or whatever it is. But anyway, get us those recipes. We want them we've got a loose leaf cookbook coming, and got a crew working on it. They're diligent workers. I was hoping to have a few of the recipes, at least this feast. It's going to be one that you can add the recipes to as you get them, more as we get them. So we hope to get the beginning ready for this feast, then we'll take it from there. The recalls on food. We're watching it closely. We got some of the most diligent people watching our food that you can find, and they stay on top of it constantly, making sure that we don't get the wrong thing. And when we do, we get on the phone immediately. We get it out of our coolers. We get it back to the company as fast as possible, which this takes place sometimes. The cause of most of the food, if the manufacturers, the canneries, and the people who are having crops gathered from gardens, the biggest problems you're having with your food could be solved if you would pay attention to the laws on clean and unclean in the Holy Scripture. When you get this uncleanness mixed with the foods, I don't care if it's tomatoes or spinach or whatever, you get uncleanness mixed with it, you're going to have trouble. You also have trouble when you don't do what my mother said years ago, pick it fresh. Believe it or not, that's the first thing we do early of a morning before it starts losing its strength, normally sugar and salt. When you pick vegetables, the first thing they lose is sugar and salt. You've got to replace it. You need to replace it so you'll get the sugar and salt in your body. If you don't, they'll be feeding it to you in a tube in the hospital. Yes, that's how bad you need it. When I worked as a second miller in a ground mill and elevator, making milling flour, but we also made feed cattle and chicken feed and so forth. We didn't have air conditioning. In fact, there was hardly any air conditioning anywhere at that time. The only air conditioning would come when you opened the door, which we didn't have windows in the place, so you can imagine with that machinery, as thick with machinery, it got hot. And only the tough survived at that time. But we did have a drinking fountain, not cold water, just regular water. And we had a bowl on top that had salt tablets in it, and with a sign that says, if you start getting weak or getting weak tremors, take 2 of these immediately and sit down for a few minutes. and of course you get right over it when you did, as your body was just needing salt. It's got to have it. You can't let food sit out. Walmart got accused here recently. I don't know if you saw it or not, but the people bought some chicken and they went to the lake on a hot summer day, and then they brought it back. It had worms in it, and they wanted to get their money back, and Walmart said no, you didn't. It wasn't that way when you bought it. If you take chicken is okay as long as you take care of it properly, but you can't take chicken in a lunchbox and leave it sitting out or get hot. One fly, as they told on the Walmart story, one fly landing on your cooked chicken, you'll have worms in that cooked chicken within an hour. One fly lands on it, and in 1 hour later, you'll have worms in that chicken. Keep that in mind. Somebody said, "How did your mother do it?" She didn't have refrigeration. She took her chicken alive with us to the field when she fixed chicken in the days of harvest. She took the chicken live with her to the field in a crate, and of course, just before noon, she butchered the chicken, and she made chicken and dumplings or whatever it was. She took all 5 ingredients too with her. You know, remember that. Someone made some cornbread. You ever eat cornbread without egg in it? The way to make sure that you get the egg in it is have the bowl that holds the egg with it sitting on your table. That way you won't forget the egg or the milk or whatever. Anyway, Mother would take a chicken, a live chicken or 2 live chickens. Mother could kill and dress a chicken, I believe, in 2 minutes. She was fast. It took me about 2.5, something like that, but I was pretty close behind. But she'd kill, dress the chicken, cut it up, and have it fried, and have the grease getting hot on the stove or the water, whatever one she was going to fix. And in just about 5 minutes later, she'd have that chicken in the pot cooking. Now that's the way we kept it from ruining. How did we keep the cooked chicken from ruining? We ate it. Don't carry it around with you all day. Don't stick it in your pocket and carry it around with you. You'll be carrying a pocket full of worms. Remember that. Keep it fresh. You, sitting here in front of me, you were before ordained. You were before prophesied. That's what that word means. You can be turning over to Ephesians. That's where we left off last week. Ephesians. The idea with Christianity, I was glad that the young deacon brought this out about Christianity and their stupidity, saying, well, just believe. Believe this match will strike? Yeah, that'll do it. Just believe. You can set yourself on fire with it. Believe in these bombs, all these bombs that the United States is gathering. That's what they believe in. You can see they're making a killing. I like the way they named that article, making a killing. And of course, that's what they're doing. They're selling bombs and things. But you got to remember the prophecy behind this. And you can read it in the mark of the beast, as the elder said. And as Yedidia is always proclaiming, you can read it in the mark of the beast. The quartet is going to start a fire in a 4th part of the earth. And 1/3 of man is going to be killed from sickness, disease, epidemics, hunger, and of course the use of the bombs. And it gives you the colors there to go by. Someone was saying that even in the smaller ones you get that color. I haven't seen it, but it certainly sounds reasonable, and I do believe it. But the ones now that do the 1 hour burning, that's going to come at the end of this 1/3 of man being dead in that 4th part of the earth. The killing is going on right now. Making a killing. Well, they're making a killing in 2 ways. They're killing the people, but they're making a lot of money doing it. And all the countries are that sell the bombs. I noticed that they issued, get this, they issued $38 billion to Yisrael, to the land of Israel, for their military activities. $38 billion. You know, and of course, Israel is our ally. We're dependent on them heavily in a lot of cases. And of course, we're furnishing them with the money and the weapons supplies. But what they're going to use this for is what the Vatican issued, the order that the Vatican issued. He's the first one seen in Revelation 6. The Vatican, the white horse, pretending to be righteous, of course. That's what the white horse means. It's, Yeshua also comes on a white horse, but he's righteous. This one comes on a white horse pretending. He's the false prophet, but he pretends to be a righteous person and a righteous religious system, while they make this killing, this big killing, hoping to kill, and this is their plans, and they've let it be known. Malachi Martin was the first one that told about their plans, but others have too since then. The earth has to be depopulated, they say. It's got to be depopulated by 4/5, by about 6 billion people, they say. And of course, this is what they're going to do. Yahweh shows that 4/5 of the earth's population is going to be wiped out. But the most of this is going to come in the 1 hour burning that we see in Revelation 17 and 18. 1 hour burning. If you've read my newsletters, we give you the scientific proof that that's exactly what the scientists say it will take with an all-out war, even just between Russia and the United States, and only using about 1/3 of the weapons that they got stockpiled. But with this, we have other nations, of course, involved in this. China is teaming up with Russia. Iran is teaming up with Russia. Who knows? Israel may be teaming up with them. You can never tell about an ally. That's what Yahweh tried to tell the kings. You can't trust in allies. And of course, your allies, whoever paid the biggest price, they're making a killing too. Well, in Ephesians here, we see that Yahweh preordained a gathering that he would gather himself in this time period that would actually bring this to a showdown, this land of sin, the great sin that is spread all over the world. If you remember Jeremiah 23 and verse 15, it said they have taken this profaneness throughout the whole world. That shouldn't leave any doubt in anyone's mind who it is that he's talking about in the last days. Because then it points out and says, well, it'll be beyond Babylon. And the next thing we know, we hear of them moving all of the house of Yahweh equipment and everything to Rome. It shouldn't be too hard to understand who this religious system is in this time period. Then Yahweh says she sits on 7 hills. Not too many cities that sit on 7 hills that's a leader of the kings of the earth either. But the Apostle Shaul, I don't know if he understood everything he wrote here, but it's a magnificent information that he gives in the book of Ephesians. If you go there to chapter 1 and look at verse 3, he said, "Blessed be Yahweh, the Father of our King, High Priest," as Hebrews 10:21 says. Blessed is the Father Yahweh of our King, Father of our King, Yeshua Messiah. Now, the King James Version, and it's by the great and brilliant and popular kings of the earth, the Roman Catholic Church. Blessed be Yahweh, the Father of the kings of Jesus Christ, is what they removed. Now, they took his name out, Yeshua's name out, and they put their false gods in this place right here. Now, we have the information for anyone. I put it in the newsletters regularly, too, because I'm trying to get it out to the world at this time period, in this time period, that the names were removed. The Catholic Church admits that they were removed. They make no move to put them back. Some of them calls it evil. Many of them do. The Vatican did not want the Book of Yahweh to be ever shown again. They had it hidden. And if it hadn't been that certain plagues started coming and killed off their leading men, it wouldn't have been done. But the plagues did come. They brought them on themselves because they got tired of burying the dead. There's too many of them. And the sicknesses began. And of course, the blood started crying out in sickness and disease. Well, here we see that it was Yeshua who has blessed us with all spiritual blessings of the heavens in Messiah, because he chose us with him. Because he chose us with him, that is, Yahweh chose us with Yeshua before the foundation of the world. We'll come back to that. Let's read on. That we were to be holy and without blame before him in love. Well, he called you for that work right there. Called you into his work. Because Yeshua said, I come quickly, and my work is with me to give every man his, I'll change it just a little, every man and woman their position in the house of Yahweh. Well, of course, that's what you're called for, to be tested. And your positions are all being judged by Yeshua. He's the judge over mankind. All judgment is given unto him. Verse 5 says, preordaining us to be his children. That is foretelling. That preordaining is just foretelling us, or prophesying that we would be his children, preordaining us to be his children by adoption. Adoption through Yeshua, Messiah, according to the righteous pleasure of his, Yahweh's plan. That preordaining or foreordaining just means prophesying or foretelling this in advance, because every one of Yahweh's works, of course, is prophesied. He will have no work unless it's already prophesied and in the Book of Yahweh. Search out the Book of Yahweh and read. Not one of these will fail. You need to know every one of them. You need to be searching it, finding it. You can't do it and watch television. It doesn't work. You can't do it and have a bunch of racket going on around you in the house. You can't concentrate that way. No one can. Your mind will get boggled. You'll get irritated. You'll get to hollering and screaming at people. Well, this now, this is not hard to understand if you'll just pay close attention to every word he says. People read over it quickly, and you don't get what Yahweh is saying here. Verse 5, salvation, caused. Look at that. Verse 5, through Yeshua. Well, before Yeshua, there was no salvation. That's what it's saying there. He said salvation only comes through Yeshua. This salvation, the completion of this preordained, this prophesied plan. It's not fulfilled till Yeshua. And of course right now, Yeshua is not holding his full office. He's only high priest over the house of Yahweh. He's forming a house of Yahweh right now with you. That's the reason you're here. You were preordained or pre-prophesied in advance. And if you will turn to Acts, hold your place there in Ephesians, and turn to Acts 4, and look at verse 12. Acts 4 and verse 12. Now, of course, Satan has fought against her and her sons. Her and her sons have fought against the work of Yahweh. They haven't stopped it. They haven't even slowed it down. It's like a big tree. Yeshua put it that way. It's like a big tree. Yahweh put it that way too in Genesis, the 2nd chapter. This is Acts 4 and verse 12. Acts 4. Found on page 843, but you need to learn those books. Acts 4 and verse 12. He says, "Neither is there salvation in any other, for there is no other name under heaven given among men by which we must be saved." So without that name, and the calling upon that name, the teaching of that name, the understanding of the name, there was no salvation. Well, of course, that's what another scripture says by the prophet. He said, before that time, before the prophesied time. And of course, the prophesied time, we're getting ready for it right now. Yeshua is getting you ready. He's giving you a job in the house to qualify you for the job you're going to take at the end of this time, when your subconscious mind will be given to you, and you will be able to do many of the things that you read about Yahweh doing. If you look back to verse 1 of chapter 4 of Acts, it says, you'll see who he's talking about here. "And as they spoke to the people, the priest, the captain of the temple," that's of the house of Yahweh, of the house of Yahweh, "and the Sadducees came upon them." Came upon them, mad, irritated, wanting to kill them. With Chenaniah the high priest, and Cephas, Yochanan, and Alexander, as well as all who were related to the high priest, were gathered together at Jerusalem. And in this case, they were gathered together against the apostles who were speaking using the name Yeshua Messiah. Now, at that time, it was much worse than it was in Jeremiah 23, verses 26 and 27, where Jeremiah is saying, "You've caused my people to forget my name for Lord." Well, of course, that's what they were teaching. The Coptic Catholic religion was getting rid of the names Yahweh and everything that had to do with him. House of Yahweh became House of the Lord. The lawyers told us, change your name to House of God or House of the Lord, and you won't be having any trouble out of these people. You noticed what we did after that, right? Well, but the rulers here, the Sadducees, the priests, and so forth, they fought against this name. Their children later are the ones that actually removed it from the scriptures, but they followed the same pattern. They bore the same fruit. That tree bore the same fruit all the way through, from the time they rose up against Moshe till the time they persecuted the prophets, till the time they killed Yeshua Messiah, till the time they stoned Stephen, who was Stephen and the apostles here, trying to wipe them out. By the time they killed everyone who came to keep the Passover in 70 AY, Yes. They destroyed the house of Yahweh, they didn't destroy it, they removed the stones. They took everything to Rome. Everything to Rome. And we're the first ones that's ever brought that out. And we saw the Ark of Titus on the hill where the Knesset stands at this time. They called that hill the hill of evil decisions. That's what was told to us by the guides there. So they laid hands on them and placed them under arrest. These were the priests now that was doing this, and later they're the ones that... But with that in mind now, with that in mind, go back to Ephesians here. Verse 5. Now the apostles was using this name, and they were saying there's no other name. There's no salvation outside of Yeshua Messiah. There's no other name that you can call on for salvation except Yeshua Messiah. Through him, adoptions are going to be made, ratified. They're going to be signed, and forever you're going to be as a son and daughter. You won't be the original sons and daughters that were without proof. You're going to be the proven sons and daughters that were begotten with the laws of Yahweh and given a job in the house, assigned everyone as what his work will be, and then they're being tested, tried. I know most of you haven't gone through anything that you don't like. You just smiled all the way, right? But some of us cry. But we get over it, don't we? Now, look at verse 3 again. That is, Yahweh chose us with Yeshua, not Yeshua chose us with him. Yeshua is to make the judgment. After he gives you a job, as is shown in Revelations 22, and you are tried for this certain time, then he makes the judgment to say, you have become a full-fledged son of Yahweh. And he signs the papers. Blessed be Yahweh, the Father of your King, Yeshua Messiah, who has blessed us. Father Yahweh has blessed us with all spiritual blessings of the heavens in Messiah, because he chose us from with him, because Yahweh chose us with Yeshua Messiah before the foundation of the world. Before the foundation of the world. Adoption is the placing as a son or daughter, the admission of a person to some or all of the privileges of natural kinship. Another one says, to the stranger, I will give a name. Well, that's exactly what Yeshua does. He's the one that set over the sons of men. All judgment is given unto him. But notice, this is all future. It's the plan. It's the plan of Yahweh. It's not finished yet. It will be finished in the days of the seventh light, the seventh Malach. It'll be finished. Right. It's in the plan. It will be done through Yeshua as high priest. So he had to become high priest before any of this could ever be done. He's training now. He's in training right now. He's also making judgments right now concerning each and every one of us. Let's turn over to Hebrews, the first chapter. The Apostle Shaul went on to write there that we would become like Yeshua. Well, look at Hebrews 1 and look at verse 13. He says, "But to which of the Malachim has he ever said, 'Set at my right hand until I make,' till Yahweh makes your enemies your footstool?" And he's actually got plans with that. And then look back to Yochanan 5. Yochanan 5. And notice now verse 27. "And has given him," that is the Son of Man, Yeshua Messiah, Yahweh has given Yeshua Messiah, and has given him authority. Yahweh has given him authority to execute judgment. Also, because he is the Son of Man. He's the Son of Man. I'm going to make man in my image, and I'm going to give him authority. That's what he's doing. Foretold. The gathering. Let's go back to Ephesians again. This gathering, this great gathering that is taking place right now. The way you gather is with words. And of course that's what we're doing. We're sending out, we're having to fight all the deception that took place before us. This removing of the names. There's no names and there's no salvation. If you don't have the correct name, you don't have salvation. There's a name you must call on, and he's the only one. He's been given full authority to make these judgments. The judgment is whether you are doing your job properly to become a full-fledged Yahweh son or daughter. Now that's what's shown in the Holy Scripture. He's high priest over the house of Yahweh. The judgment is given unto him. Yes. Okay, and in Ephesians now 1, and look at verse 6 here. Ephesians 1 verse 6. "To the praise of his glorious love, with which he has honored us in one he loves." In one he loves. He loves us all, but he honored us in one he loves, in whom we have redemption. That is, if we do what is told to us in Acts 3:19, repent and be converted, that you have redemption, or you have your sins forgiven, in whom we have redemption through Yeshua. Through Yeshua. That's who we have redemption through, that name. He's talking about his name here and how that just above, it's Yeshua Messiah. And in whom we have redemption through his blood, that is, he in dying for us to pay for our sins. He didn't sin, so when he died, he gave his life to pay for our sins, not his own. Through his blood, the forgiveness of trespass according to the riches of his pardon, and of course the foundation, as you see, according to this foundation, as you see in verse 4, which he made to abound toward us in all wisdom and understanding, having revealed to us the great secret of his plan. Yeshua says it's hid from the wise and prudent. He's let them go their own way. He said he shows it to those whom he calls, or who he has preordained, who he has prophesied of. He's prophesied of the house of Yahweh that he would establish in these last days. If you don't know those prophecies, you've got to be blind, open, whatever. But we are the house of Yahweh, established in the chief of the nation. Seek first the habitation of your Father and his righteousness. That's what Yahweh tells you. And this right here, having revealed to us the great secret of his plan to us, according to his righteous pleasure, which he has purposed to himself, proposed to himself, for the administration of, notice, the house of Yahweh. At the completed time, the house of Yahweh, it's not completed yet, but it will be completed, a completed time, together in one. We're doing it right now. The word is going out. People are saying, yes, this is true. This is the truth. This is what the Scripture said. And brethren, we're hearing from people from many nations you wouldn't believe, in war-torn countries right now, that Yahweh is protecting and getting ready to bring them here. That one, that means unity. Gathered together in one. It don't mean one ball. It means in unity with Yahweh. To himself, unity to himself, under one head, the Messiah, both the things which are yet in the heavens and the things also for the earth in him. Also for the earth in him, in Yahweh, in whom also we are allotted an inheritance. That's the inheritance that we get through this adoption, becoming full-fledged members of the house of Yahweh, loyal members, not like Satan's sons who have thrown away their once would have been inheritance, and Yahweh spared them not. And in the same scriptures it says he didn't spare either the world in Noah's day, just to assure you that he's not going to have sin in his kingdom. It just won't be there. We've got to get it out. We've got to get the thoughts of it out. We got to get our minds, brethren, on this. It's the greatest goal you could place there. It's better than television. There's no way that you would enjoy television nearly as much as you'll enjoy this if you can get your mind on this book right here, this live book. It's a book of life, and it is alive. In whom also we are allotted an inheritance, being preordained, that's prophesied, being prophesied of in Scripture, as he set forth, as all things work together to the purpose of his plan, his whole plan being worked out here. Let me see. Let's just get a couple more scriptures here. Go back to Romans the 8th chapter. If I can get this covered, I can go on to other things next week, Yahweh willing. Chapter 8 of Romans. Chapter 8. Romans 8 and verse 28. Romans 8 and verse 28. And we know that all things work together for righteousness to those, now get that word righteousness, without righteousness and without Yeshua setting us the perfect example of righteousness, showing what true love actually means, putting aside, yes, he could have went to sinful pleasures, there's plenty of it. The Pharisees, Sadducees, Essenes, and Herodians all did. The 12 tribes, the heads of Jacob, they all went to the sins of evil. Their desires was placed in that direction, and that's the way they followed. And we know that all things work together for righteousness to those who love Yahweh, who learn to love Yahweh. And you've got to learn to do it. And the way you learn to do it is feed your mind with this book of life here, the living book of Yahweh. Feed it into your mind. Righteousness to those who love Yahweh, to those who are the called out according to his plan, according to his set plan. In verse 29, for whom he did foreknow, he also did foreordain to be conformed now, get that, to be changed over by words, by teaching, by acceptance, by believing. Yes, believing what is taught, believing the one sent. All of these things. For whom he did foreknow, he did foreordain to be conformed, to be converted, to repent and be converted to the image of his Son, Yeshua Messiah, the one that lived perfectly, that he might be the firstborn among many brothers and sisters. Firstborn, your brothers and sisters. I'll give you a name equal to sons and daughters. The original sons and daughters. Go to Hebrews 1. Hebrews 1 and look at verse 8. Hebrews 1 verse 8. But to the Son, he says, the throne of your Father is forever and ever, a scepter. Now, this word right here, scepter, is the one that's given in Genesis 49, verses 10 and 11, and someone else holds that scepter now. It's Yada. Yada now sits on 7 hills of Rome. That's what Malachi Martin brought out in the keys of this blood. The keys of the blood. Well, of course, that's the way it was issued at one time. And that holds true. It was the keys to that bloodline right there that where you accepted your allotment, your inheritance, and so forth. That was all brought down through that bloodline. And right now, on the 7 hills of Rome, this scepter right here is held fast. He's not qualifying for what this scepter must bring. I'll make mankind in my image, after my likeness, and I will give them authority. Yada is not making them in Yahweh's image or his authority. Yada is making them like the gods, evil like the gods, as shown in Genesis 3 verse 5, evil like the gods. But Yahweh laid the foundation in the beginning, and Yahweh is going to carry this plan out. Yada knew that plan, but they didn't accept it, and they wanted to serve their gods. It was making a killing. When you serve your gods, you really make a killing. Killing people and getting your pockets full of money. Scepter. But to the Son, he says, the throne of your Father is forever and ever. This inheritance, this adoption, this inheritance by adoption that we are about to receive, this is what we're going to receive. It's forever. Never be taken from you. A scepter of righteousness is the scepter of your kingdom that you're about to possess as sons, true sons and proven daughters of Yahweh. You have loved righteousness, and this is what you're proving right now. He who practices righteousness is righteous. He who practices righteousness. That's what Yochanan, 1 Yochanan 3, 7 and 8. He who practices righteousness is righteous. You have loved righteousness and hated iniquity. Therefore, Yahweh your Father has anointed you with the oil of gladness more than your companions, and And you, Yahweh, in the beginning laid the foundation of the earth. It should be for the earth. If you'd circle that and change it to for the earth, I'll show you why in just a little while. It'll go right into the other scriptures. And the heavens, you laid the foundations for the heavens. You know, this is another job that you're training right now to take over. The thing that you must train for is obedience. That's what you've got to prove to Yahweh. And love. Obedience and love. And then the rest of this will be given to you. Seek Yahweh and His righteousness, and all this other will be added. Well, what he's talking about is this book of Yahweh here, and the promises, the inheritance goes to you. But he laid the foundation, and this is not talking about something physical here. It's talking about the foundation you're learning every time you come to the house of Yahweh. He laid the foundation of the earth, or for the earth, and for the heavens. He's going to bring this about in heaven too. You're going to bring it about. He's going to make you in His image. He's going to give you authority over the heavens and the earth. So He laid this in the beginning. He made this plan from the beginning that He is going to bring righteousness to all the heavens, but from the earth, from mankind, from the Son of Man. Not the others. They had their opportunity and they blew it. They proved that they couldn't do it. You're proving now that you will and can. Right. The heavens, they're the work of His hands. This is, let's see, verse 10. Look at verse 13. But to which of the Malachim has He said this? Well, He said it to His previous sons, but I won't go into that right now. But He didn't say this, but He gave them opportunity to be like Yahshua was. But let's go back to Timothy now. 2 Timothy, Go to 2 Timothy, and keep that in mind, what we just brought there now, the foundations. Set this foundation in the beginning. He set the foundation for mankind and for receiving this inheritance. He set your foundation for it. And that foundation is what we're striving to get to right now. We're striving to do this job in peace and show love and joy and bring love, joy, and peace. Yes, by humbly submittance, as Yahshua said. You must humbly submit in order to do this. Chapter 2, 2 Timothy 2, and look at verse 19. You'll get a whole different foundation here now. Nevertheless, the foundation that He set for the earth and for the heavens that we're going to work and achieve, that's our job that He has assigned us already in prophecy. He's assigned that to us in prophecy, and not one of these will fail, He said. 2 Timothy 2:19, nevertheless, the foundation of Yahweh stands sure. The one He made in the beginning for heaven and earth, the job that He gave to those He can make in His image and His likeness. Then He will give them authority. Well, this foundation stands sure now. Having this seal, it's sure. He's not going to relent. If He spared not His first sons who left their estate, He certainly won't spare anyone else. That's what He's trying to get over to you. Yahweh knows those who are His because. Read it for yourself. Otherwise, you belong to Satan the devil, and he will have nothing to do with you. Look on over the second Kephah. Everybody has Books of Yahweh, don't they? Let me go ahead and read it. 19, the whole thing. Yahweh knows who are His because everyone who reverences if you want to get my the work that we have done already on reverencing Yahweh, it's almost a must to understand this. It is a must to understand what reverencing Yahweh means. The name of Yahweh, reverencing the name of Yahweh, he departs from iniquity. Iniquity is what 4,200 religions in the world are doing right now. They're doing away with Yahweh's laws, with the worship of Yahweh. They're following the Coptic Catholics. They're following the Coptic Catholic religion of worshiping the gods. Let's go to 2 Kepha. 2 Kepha. I guess I'll have to close with this. It's getting too far. But 2 Kepha 4. 2:4. Well, I'm glad you said that anyway. 2 Kepha 2, verse 4. For if Yahweh did not spare, he's talking about the condemnation of those who riot, who watch television in the daytime and at night, and let your lust be fulfilled, the worldly lust of the gods that Satan really wants in your head. That's what he's talking about. Well, their condemnation will not linger. That is, it's prophesied what is going to take place with these people. There'll be ashes underneath your feet, and their destruction will not slumber. For Yahweh did not spare. If Yahweh did not spare his first sons who sinned, who went against, who left their estate, but will cast them into abyss, delivering them into chains of darkness to be reserved for judgment. That's where they are right now, chains of darkness. They're groping in the dark. Let me get one more scripture. Let's go back over to Genesis 49. Genesis 49. It helps when you put these little tags. This really helps if I can get a picture of it. These are about wore out, but if you see those little tags, they stick up and you just reach over. See, that's shut right there like that. And you just reach over and you get that tag and you open it up, and there's Genesis 49 right in front of you. Ephesians. How quick could you find it? There it is. Ephesians. Look at that. Isn't that easy? First Kepha, look at that. It's not magic. I'll give you a pattern for it too. It works real easy. I've changed the pattern so many times I got it perfected now. Genesis 49 now. Keep all of that in mind. Go to verse 10. Now this scepter, that is scepter of righteousness here, this is what was given to Yada. Notice it's given to Yada, this ruling power. And if you look at verse 9, this is for the last days. He's still holding it. Where is he holding it? Where is he the leader of the kings of the earth? Your brothers will praise you. All the 12 tribes is going to praise you. Yes, they're following after them, after Yada. And he's got his hand on the neck of everyone in the world. Yes, all the earth will worship him. All the world, all nations is going to worship him, the beast and Satan, who gives him his great authority. Yes. He could have had authority coming from Yahweh and been teaching righteousness, but he forsook that. You are offered this right now. Yeshua's already made it. He's our high priest, and he's going to give you protection. Yahweh shows he's going to. It's going to come from the Son of Man, yes, but it's given by Yahweh to the Son of Man. And Yeshua's got power right now. And when they're talking about making war with the Lamb, you know, they're hoping to destroy the Lamb. Satan actually hopes, her and her sons are hoping to destroy the earth and the heavens that involve the earth, which include Yeshua Messiah. 10 and 11, there's where you get your scepter. And notice us. Us in verse 11, that's us. Prophesied, the house of Yahweh in these last days, verse 1 of that chapter. Read it and believe it. Verse 11 and 12. Thither your donkeys to the vine. The vine is Yeshua Messiah. Thither your donkeys to the vine. Then his donkey's coat to the chosen branch. You just got to know the scriptures, and they make so much sense when you see them. The chosen branch. Well, the branch is given to you in many, many different prophecies. And this is what's going to bring it about. And then Yahweh will wash his garments with his blood, Yeshua's blood. Go back to the last scripture. I'm going to quit now. After this one, Amos 3. The Pope says this will probably be the last Christmas. That's what I said. Praise Yahweh. In fact, I don't think they're going to have this Christmas. That's my thoughts. No prophecies for it yet. You got it? 3 verse 7. Most assuredly, Father Yahweh will have no work other than the work he has prophesied. He has preordained, pre-prophesied in advance. It just won't be. There'll be no other name whereby you must be saved than Yeshua Messiah. Not ever. They can put whatever gods they want in their renditions of the Book of Yahweh. That won't save them. There is no salvation in those 4,200 religions. No way. They're doing exactly what Satan wants them to do. They're going to destroy 4/5 of the earth's population. That's what they want to do. That's their desire. The only thing, they're going to get caught up in their own fire. The only ones that's going to be left is the ones that Yahweh protects himself. I'll quote it. I won't turn to it. I said that would be the last one, so I'll just quote this one. Yahweh says, I'm going to encamp about my house. Nothing is going to destroy this work. The gates of hell is not going to prevail. You can look up that word. Encamp. Fine. In Zechariah. May Yahweh bless you, and I'll turn the services back to the next leader. I love you.